So ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to today's Lunch and Learn panel series. It's brought to you by ProfitMaster Global Outsourcing. It's your premium offshoring solution provider. Now, we're going to do things a little bit different today. Everybody would have, when you registered, you would have received an email with some asking a question as well. So we've got a series of different questions that are pre-planned as well, so which is fantastic. So thank you to everyone that provided us with a question. The other thing we're going to do a little bit different is we're going to start a bit of a chat bar. Now, these sessions have been incredibly popular, which has been fantastic. And thank you again for being a part of this. What people have been asking for is they wanted to ask some questions and get some feedback from other people throughout the session. So I've got our offshore specialist, Delia McKenzie. She's going to be in charge of the chat bar. So if you've got any questions, you've got any thoughts that you want to ask us throughout, please throw it into the chat bar and we'll definitely be able to moderate that. Delia will be straight onto that. I think one of the biggest things in the last couple of months when we've run these has been the issue of direct engagement. So if you're employing people or contracting people, in inverted commas there, contracting people directly, I know that's been the last couple of sessions that we've run, and there's been a lot of talk around this case that was upheld where, people over in the Philippines that are employed directly and under a contract arrangement now will be deemed to be employees. So if that's something you're not aware of, please make sure, again, you chat to Delia about that. I know sort of one of our guests, Jenna, she's been quite vocal about it as well in terms of what you're doing is not right. And not only are you putting the company at risk, you're also putting the directors at risk with potential ATO issues as well with superannuation and audits and personal liability. So things just to be aware of. So Delia will be running the chat, which is fantastic. So Delia, I'll leave that to you. So today we're going to be talking about a pretty important topic with my two guests, panelists that are joining us. We're talking about building culture and time management into your remote offshore workplace. Today, I have two brilliant panelists joining me. I've got Jenna Paulin and I've got Ildi Rasprosa. Ladies, how are we?
Hi, Paul. Hi, Jenna.
Good to have you both here. Now, some of the key things we're going to talk about today are going to be team improvements, improving team dynamics, communication, productivity. So strap yourself into all of you that have joined us. I know there's more and more joining us, which is awesome to see. We'll be online for about 45, 50 minutes. We've got about 5 to 6 questions that have come through from you guys as well. So stick with us. Hopefully we don't go past the hour, that's for sure. Now, let's get into this. So Ildi, I'm going to start with you. In one of our conversations that we were talking about, it's an interesting statistic that you brought up, and it was about offshore staff are utilised at 40 to 60% at productivity capacity. One, are you okay to please expand on that and go into why?
It's a very interesting one because often employers think that they are actually utilizing their teams at a high potential. But we flipped the question and we pretty much went to our client base and we asked this time the offshore team, what do they think? What is their utilization within the companies? And it was quite surprising when we found that most of the people think that they are not utilized for more than 60% of their capacity and capability. And it's a two-part question because it's not just about loading tasks onto people and getting things done. It's about how much are you really tapping into their genius? How much are you utilizing them to their full capacity and their talent? And we found that there's a huge discrepancy, and often because they are out of sight and out of mind and you don't see them all the time, that trust and perception issue cripples in, and sometimes even in the best companies that we work with, communication is a huge issue, and obviously that has an underlying cultural issue and so on, and probably Jenna can talk a lot more about this. But what we found was that there's a fear of speaking up. And on one end, you have an employer who's afraid that they are overloading people. And on the other hand, you have amazing people who want to be challenged but don't know how to ask for it. So there's a lot that we can say in this space. But I do believe that paying a little bit more attention and looking at the offshore team as part of your team rather than just an extension of your 10 fingers is crucial when it comes to utilizing your team at its best.
Yeah, interesting. Look, I suppose if you're an accountant or let's say a lawyer, that still they may manage their time by their 6-minute units. That may be a little bit easier to measure. What's your thoughts on how we measure that? And just as a side note to that, I know the Profit Master team, certainly with the people that they've got, and there's some of them online right now, and I know they're closer to the 90%. So you talk about the 40 to 60%. I know Profit Master in particular are closer to the 90%. So, but what's your thoughts on how we measure those people to make sure they can be properly utilized?
Mm. There's, I'm not a believer in measuring the minutes. Uh, for a number of reasons. And this is why we talk about productivity and not time management. You can't really manage time. You can only manage yourself. Measuring every minute of what you do often has the exact reverse effect of what you want to achieve. Because some things will take faster and other things will be taking a little bit more time. But when you want to look at the performance of people, you have to look at the whole picture. And yes, I know there's the billable times and the non-billable hours and so on, but I'll give you a little interesting fact there too. In our experience, even lawyers tend to just measure their billable hours, and often they have no clue how much real unbillable hour is creeping at the top end of their staff. And this is where the burnout and the cultural issues and everything comes to the table, because while they have very much clarity around the billable side of things, they only have a sense of what else are their people putting on the table. And this is why while there's industries where you can't do anything else but actually put the timer on and that's it, you should be doing that for other things too, so that you have a good idea of how long does it take you to do a task on average, because you can't plan unless you know. And it's not about measuring how long did you take to have a cup of coffee, but it's all about having a good idea of who's better at what. Because often we are tasking people with stuff that they are not good at it at all, and they will take 2 to 3 times longer than other staff members. So it's all about how do you distribute the workload and how do you utilize your team in a way that you are tapping into their genius.
Yeah,
And I think that's the trick.
yeah, good. There's actually a question, a really good question that somebody asked, which we'll get to at the end of this around that as well, which is really important. And look, I tend to agree with you. I know through our coaching, when we were doing a lot of my coaching through the accounting industry, you're right. It's easy to measure that charge time. I suppose one of the things that we used to focus on was the non-charge time, which I think is what you're
Mm.
you're directly relating that to say, well, we might have a team members might have an 80% chargeable time target, and then there's a billable element to that as well. While most people don't like write-offs, sometimes we just got to accept them. Some firms don't accept them, but it's about the 20%. What's happening with that 20% of time? And I think the more you can break that down with client codes, I always used to ask, why is it going to a sundry code as an example, as opposed to an actual code? So we can actually know where that time is being spent. And then it's about, you raised it before, communication. I'm going to get to a communication topic very soon, or question very soon. But it comes back down to communicating with the team members to what they're doing with their time and how it can be better utilized. At the end of the day, you use the word utilization as well. It's about
All
speaking to them in communication.
I'm sorry, I will jump in because there's a very important thing that we need to talk about here. What does that 80% mean to you? Is it 80% of the whole time of their employment, so the 7.5 hours, or are we talking about their expected billable hours, and the 80% refers to that bit? Because there's two different things.
Yep.
Often I hear people, especially business owners, say, "Oh, I'm pushing my team to 90% productivity." And the problem with that is that's a straight road to burnout. And again, I'm sure that Jenna can tell us a lot more about this. But the problem with that is that we're still human beings. And I don't think that you can push a team over 80%. Yes, you can for short periods of time for a specific project that needs to be pushed very quickly through, that's fine. But on the long run, anything you do above that 80% is actually pushing your team over their ability, because you're tapping and you're chewing into their being a human being kind of time. Because you have to admit that in that 7.5 hours that you have them a day, you have to allow them to be humans, to connect with humans, to have a cup of coffee, to connect with people, to learn from the team, to be able to ask questions without the pressure of a meeting, and to be able to tap into that collective strength of the team.
Mm.
And if you're not doing that, then you're missing out on a big part of your productivity.
Yeah, look, I'd agree, and I think the debate will go on for maybe another 30 years as well, with regards to how accounting firms in particular would see that in terms of what's their chargeable time. So the way that I was, just to quickly explain it, I was talking about chargeable time, and then from your chargeable time, you've then got billable time. So that's typically how the industry works. So if you can charge 80% of your time, ideally with no write-offs, then you can bill 80% of what you've charged. So that's typically how that would work. And you're right, there are, and some of the bigger firms, yeah, they just expect, and they'll tell you in an interview that you're expected to hit 90% of targets. Now, whether that, again, how that plays off in terms of the cultural side, we can probably come back to that as well. And I'm sure Jenna's got some thoughts on that as well. But that's just to explain where I meant there. That's all. Let's come back to communication, because I know it plays a hugely vital role. And again, there was another question which we'll get to later on about communication. Now, Ildi, when we're talking, again, we've spoken about this before. Let's talk about the non-verbal and unspoken communication cues that have been, again, you've been successful in developing.
Well, I suppose we need to think about communication not just from the perspective of what you say, what you write, what you hear, but from this perspective of who you really are and what are your preferences about when it comes to communication. Because often what I found that a lot of times we don't look at our teams and we don't assess what will they understand when we say something, or when we act in some certain way. And I'll just pick one. We have a beautiful archetypal model. If anyone is interested, reach out. I'm happy to to talk to it for hours. But what we found is that because about 60% of the population falls into this time sitter category, or at least they have time sitter traits, with their communication, it's a very interesting dual thing. And this will depict what it means to tap into communication from a different angle, when you understand people first and then you communicate in a certain way with them. Their biggest fear is that they will run out of time. When you are in a meeting and you're asking the question, can someone please do this? You're actually asking mission impossible from your people, because what you're asking them is to take something on board when they are already afraid that they will not be able to hit their targets. So the flip side of this coin is that these people are, on the other hand, your yes people, which is a really fun one. If you walk up to them and tap them on the shoulder and say, "Can you please do this for me?" they will never, ever say no. But with great power comes great responsibility. If you don't have the knowledge of how much is on their plate, you're easily sending them into overwhelm and procrastination. But when it comes to communication, these guys will literally hide under the table in a meeting when you ask them to take something more on board. And these are those non-verbal cues that we're talking about, understanding and being aware what you're doing when you're communicating with your team. How is that affecting them? And how is that going to affect their productivity? Because just by throwing the question to them, you are actually increasing their stress levels. You are pushing them into that space of fear because now they are, oh, should I, would I, could I? Um, was I expected to say yes? So you're throwing them into a whole different space that is hindering their productivity because now they are not focusing on what they should be doing, but they are focusing on what was their response and how is that going to affect their future. And that's just one example. So it's so important to have a bit of clarity around who's who in your team and how to tap into with communication into their strengths the right way so that you empower them rather than pushing them under the water.
That's a good point. It's a really good point. And I suppose that's the challenge in management. Jenna, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, but that is the biggest challenge in management, isn't it?
Correct. It sure is. Yeah, when you've lost someone from their feeling overwhelmed or stressed, start again, draw a line in the sand, and move on, because I just think when someone gets to that state, you're not going to get success.
Correct. And I think that's the challenge. And I will talk about culture very soon, but it's also the challenge to make sure that when and if something like that happens, you then have the ability to bring your culture back up, because it can be quite low. We know the old Chinese whispers can spread very quickly, can't it?
Yes, yeah. And I think that's why it's really important to have that open and transparent conversation and approach in business in general, and that open, and I say in quotation, door policy. And I say that we're a remote business, but my door is always open, and make people feel valued and seen by giving that option to reach out.
So let's get into that, given what you do now, actually, in the HR space. What's some of the key insights that you can provide us with how to build a successful culture in a remote offshore sort of workplace?
Yeah, for sure. I guess I can talk to this because we do it ourselves. Fully transparent, we've only got one offshore employee, so I don't have a team of 10 or 20. We've got clients that have that. But from my experience, and my number one piece of advice is treat your offshore team members just like you treat your onshore. There is no difference whether they reside in Australia, whether that's Melbourne, Queensland, or overseas, Philippines, India, America, UK. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter, no matter what their title is, onshore, offshore. Treat them like a human being. Treat them like, I hate the word, a normal employee, your standard employee, whether they're on or offshore, because I'm living proof to say that if you bring your team members that are offshore on the journey like you do with your onshore, you're going to get 10 times better value out of them because they feel valued. I've had the live experience of our offshore employee was treated in that typical offshore model in her previous workplace and felt like just a number type of thing. But here we bring them along the journey. So yes, the laws from a country perspective, employment are different, and I can't change that. However, if our onshore team get, RDOs or extra leave at Christmas, or get birthday vouchers, get years of recognition, anything that you do from an employee benefits perspective, our offshore team member gets as well. So those extra things outside the legal T's and C's, whether you're in Australia or the Philippines or wherever, but the internal things that make up the DNA of your culture, like those matters that we just said, the offshore make sure they come along with you. We do things like company retreats. A lot of the time, they might just be for the onshore. I bring our offshore team member as well. So treat them as though they're here with you. I think that's my number one advice, because I've seen the results, that they feel valued, that they're a part of the journey, that they're not just a number. And overall, you, them, and the business are going to succeed.
Now, I know you've got Flick. How often would you be communicating with her?
Oh, daily, multiple times a day. We have our structured weekly meeting, but we might talk via message. We utilize Teams, so utilize the technology is a big thing. Multiple times a day. It's not always about work, so it's the coffee chats. Hey, how you going? What are you doing for lunch? How's your mum, dad? All that type of thing. And I think that's really valuable, because you're just treating them like humans and you're ingraining them. For us, she's ingrained in the now actually culture and workplace. And because she's offshore and I can't, from a legal perspective, employ her directly, you have to use a party like Profit Masters. But she knows, and we have very open and transparent conversations, they're just your payroll provider. In my eyes, I'm your employer, and you're my employee. And I, without speaking on her behalf, I can tell, I know she would agree with that statement. And people that I talk with out from a networking perspective, that part of my role, and they've got offshore, they don't ingrain them. They treat them differently, and that's why they have problems. That's why they have turnover. That's why they'll get poached and they're happy to jump. And I think it just goes a really long way to treat them like a normal human being.
100%, 100%. So what are some of the key elements that defines a successful company culture?
I think the willingness of people wanting to come to work and happy to come. Like I hear our general manager say, no day is a drag to come out of bed. Yeah, we've all got tasks and things that we've got to do in our work that we don't love. But each day, I'm happy to get up and come. And I think that as an owner of a company, to me, that's really pleasing, even if you've got a not so nice task or activity that you've got to do. So I have that open door policy. I'm a little bit too transparent. Sometimes I can see our team going, oh my God, what are you telling me this for, Jenna? But it really brings them along that word, the journey. So whether that's business stuff, personal stuff. Now, I'm not saying you have to open all your secrets, warts and all, but I personally know when I was learning, my manager and mentor brought me along. Didn't worry about, oh, you're not at the seat of the table, but exposed you, because that's how you learn. So I think treating everyone, being open and transparent. If we're having a good time, celebrate that. If we're having an average time or struggling or loss of sales or clients or difficult clients, share that, communicate it. Don't sugarcoat it if it's not. And I think that starts from the top. That starts from the leaders at the top and trickles down.
Yeah, look, I think there's, pardon me, there's a bit to unpack there, isn't it? Because I think that's the great thing about these little sessions, that everyone's got the ability to sit back a little bit and say, right, how am I currently approaching this? And what can I do that will give me greater involvement with the team members to ask better questions, to create better communications,
Right.
whether they're, and as you said, they could be in Perth or they could be in the Philippines. It doesn't matter, but
Correct.
your management is your management.
Yeah, and I think, gone are the days that, you knock off at 4 o'clock on a Friday, or we have pizzas or drinks. That's not just about the company culture. It's how you show up every day. It's how you act. I think I'm a really big believer in trust and faith in staff members. Don't micromanage. Obviously, they need to show you that they're doing the right thing, but give them opportunities to succeed. Don't create opportunities that they're going to fail. have faith in them. And I think it goes back to treat them as humans, adult to adult conversation, not parent to child. So, that goes with everything, you know, performance reviews. Don't wait for that formal 6 monthly or 12 monthly review. Have the conversation at the time, treat them as adults, and I think that will go a really long way to your culture.
Yep.
Another real big thing that I'm a big believer in, and it might go against the grain, but you shouldn't have to have X amount of years to climb the ladder to get from, you know, the administrator to the coordinator to the officer to the advisor, or in the accounting world to the junior, the accountant, the senior, the manager, etc. If someone has capability, the skills, confidence, and nous to do something, technically they should be at this level, but to go up there, give them the opportunity.
Yep.
Just, you know, don't wait for the years or service or the ladder climbing. Now, again, I know that goes against the grain of the traditional mindset, but it will pay off. Like, we started a new employee last week, and I said, in my world, the HR world, being able to terminate someone or have a disciplinary meeting as a HR professional, that's the good stuff. That's the juicy. You don't have to wait 5-10 years in your experience to be able to do those activities. If I see that you've got the capability and the confidence to do it, let's go for it. And that's the model that we operate on. And so people really like, they can come in with not much skills and experience, and in a very short time be doing the juicy stuff in their work.
It's good. It's
And I
great.
think that goes to the culture.
100%. I'm going to get to something on that as well with regards to, and I think we ran something last year on employee engagement. So I'm going to come back to the importance of culture and when it comes to employee engagement. But one of the things I had to write this down, otherwise I would have forgotten about it. And Jenna mentioned it before, it was with regards to performance reviews. Now, it's only a personal opinion. I believe they're a waste of time. I believe that as leaders of businesses, you can work through how to eliminate the performance review and how you can actually performance manage moving forward. Okay, so think about that for a second. A review is exactly that. You're looking in the rear vision mirror, you're looking at something that's happened in the past when we can actually set targets, goals based on performance in the future. Okay, it's a very different conversation. And I know there's accounting firms that I've worked with, and I know there's firms that could be online with 20, 30 team members. 20, 30 team members, when it comes to performance reviews, think about how much time that takes to do a performance review. And I know there's businesses that lock out 2 weeks. Think about 2 weeks of directors not charging because they're doing performance reviews. When if you were dealing with it proactively and thinking about, well, let's talk about what the next 12 months looks like, Jenna. Let's break that down to the next 90 days. Let's talk about my expectation. Let's talk about what I can expect to see from you. And let's make sure that they are aligned. It's a different conversation as opposed to let's review what you've done over the last 6 months and the 12 months. Most people can't remember what happened 6 weeks ago, but you're doing a 12 months performance review.
Exactly. I couldn't agree with you more, Paul, because, and this is coming from a HR professional that runs a HR consulting business, but we actually don't do them at Now, actually. So we first off started doing, instead of the word review, we changed it to performance development. So it's not looking back, it's looking the future. Great, awesome. But what we found was we had these conversations daily anyway. That was just in our DNA and makeup. So when it comes to the formal, it's like, well, hang on, we've already been talking about this in our day-to-day, week-to-week interaction. So we threw that in the bin. We then just created what's called a feedback loop. So it's more about getting intel to continue to grow and enhance the business. And I think that it's worked. But again, it comes down to your culture and making sure you're having those conversations as part of your daily, weekly, monthly communications and not waiting for that structured review. And you make a really good point. I haven't thought about it from that perspective. How much time do organizations waste on scheduling these goddamn reviews that most staff members get stressed about attending?
Correct.
Because they're freaking out. There should be nothing negative that comes up in a review, because anything negative should be addressed previously at the time of the situation, not in 6 months' time. I just think that's a really old school mindset. Again, I could be butting heads with some thoughts out there, but that's okay. I'm open to, challenge the status quo. Yeah. So, and I think that really connects back to what we're saying, culture.
Yes.
No one should be scared about coming to a performance review. And if they are, you're doing something wrong.
Correct. And I think the times have changed as well. We've got this new gen coming through that, I'm a different gen, but we've got this new. They want feedback. They thrive on feedback. They want to know how they can improve. So it's our role as leaders and managers to actually provide them with that, and openly and honestly. And I think if that's your approach in management, again, Ilda, you might have some thoughts on this as well, given, again, the amount of time that could be wasted. But it's so important to make sure that our communication is correct with that, because that will then create what we're talking about, that employee engagement.
Correct. And I think, like, a simple thing, if one of our team members does a really great job on something, or we get feedback from our client, like a Google review or something like that, we do what we call like shout outs we're a fully remote business, so we're not in a physical presence office. So we do shout outs on Teams live as they happen. So it shouldn't wait to, oh, Paul, I've got my meeting with you on the 15th of next month, I'm going to say, well done on getting that great feedback. I might have more of an in-depth conversation with you at the time, but I'm communicating that to that team. Well done, got a really good review, you've done a great job, that was a difficult client, shout out to Sarah, type of thing. We can do shout outs to our marketing who's flipped. We got leads the other week through ChatGPT. That's awesome. That should be publicly recognized.
Through ChatGPT.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed by that.
Yeah. when it goes to, again, your culture and your employee engagement, I know, again, you spoke about it before in terms of showing up. The ability for people to show up, and that engagement is so critical, isn't it?
Correct. If you don't show up, and that, as I said, starts the top, I like to think we're flat, but there's always a leader, there's always an owner. I hate to say it, I am the boss. The buck stops with me. At the end of the day, the risk is on me, the liability's on me. If I don't show up, why would the ones under me going to show up?
Yeah. So are you okay just quickly share, what does show up mean to you, and how do you, to use the word show again, how do you show that to the rest of the team members that are all remote?
Yeah, so a big one is, if I stuff up or make a mistake, call it out, own it. Don't sugarcoat it and try and find excuses. So I say to them, I'm not the oracle. Just because I own this company, I don't know everything. And we're now at a stage 7.5 years in. I used to be the strongest HR. I'm now the weakest. So I have to ask my team advice from when I'm doing sales, or if queries come to me. And I think that's really important, to show that I don't know it all, and let the teams know. And in our world, we don't need to know every answer when a client calls. Let me come back to you. You don't need to know everything, but you need to know how to communicate that. So I show up by being human, show up when life's a mess. I'll explain that. I can't be this perfect person all the time. I don't have the answers. And that, to show that if the team members are struggling or having a hard time, whether that's at work, whether that's at home, that gives them the vulnerability to come back and say, hey, I'm struggling, or this is going on, my world's falling apart because of ABC. So I show them that it's okay to be human. So I think, and show up by doing the work or the jobs that, the administrator could do. Well, just because I'm the owner doesn't mean I shouldn't log those notes or shouldn't do the admin. So I think really coming down to that level is really important. And I can see it comes back tenfold.
And that's what it's about, isn't it? Like, and like you're saying, we're all human. We,
Mm.
Yeah.
we all don't know everything. And I think it's important to share that with the team, because I'll guarantee you 9 times out of 10, the great ideas and the great solutions to some of the problems come from the team.
Correct. And why should I go and make a decision on a new software or what we're doing for our company retreat next week without asking their input?
Yep.
What's the point? You know, I talked to a prospect client yesterday. What's the point of rolling out all these new things? You think you've got these problems? Okay, yep, let's initiate all these things. That's not actually what the team want. Why don't we ask them first? Now, I'm not sitting here saying that they're going to get everything they want, but at least taking the feedback and their thoughts and opinions on board is going to go a long way.
Yep. Well, we often call it the magic wand. So if you had a magic wand, what would you do to change it? And you have a really, really good conversation, whether that's online or whether that's in person around a boardroom table. It's just a great conversation. It's a whiteboard session. So again, little things like that. If you had a magic wand and you can change it, what would you do?
Yeah.
You'd be amazed when you go around the room, the feedback you get from people.
Yeah, correct.
Ildi, I've got one for you. Most companies choose to offshore team members to probably lighten the load off their onshore team. It's probably fair. I know I've spoken to a lot of different companies, and the reason why they do it is they're looking for their onshore team to create capacity. The more capacity that they can create, the more revenue that they can write, so on and so on. So therefore, they've got their offshore team. But tell me why you believe it is also has the reverse effect.
Oh, I'm going to build on Jana's first. Um, hmm. It's an interesting one. Often business owners know what they need to do in order to get where they want to go. So they have clear targets, clear goals, clear pathway. What they often forget to is to actually talk to their teams about it. And what happens is they go blast in with this amazing idea that I'm going to take away half of your workload. I'm going to hire someone else to do that. And your world is going to now be rosy and peachy and so on. Now, here's what happens in reality. That person who you've done that to without actually asking where they stand in this whole picture suddenly freaks out. Because what happens if you take away half of my work? Does that mean that my position here is insecure? Does it mean that I'm going to lose my job? What does it mean? Do I need to now teach someone else on top of my own workload? There's a whole new bubble of new things that hit that employee that you are trying to lighten their workload. So that's one of the biggest reasons why it backfires. And then it becomes this whole us versus them kind of situation where there's no real feedback, where there's a silent sabotage of work. Because, and I had this sentence from someone 2, 3 weeks ago. We were talking, and this person actually threw it back at us that, but the offshore team doesn't do anything. And it was just a silent shock in the room, because even the perception, and this business is an amazing business. It has open door policies. There's a lot of communication and so on. Yet the sentiment was that by having the offshore team, they're just there to, I don't know, do admin stuff or um, I don't even know what was in his head, but it was interesting to see what the perception of having that offshore team was. So I do believe that it goes back to what Jenna was saying, that you need to treat your offshore team like your onshore team, make them visible, bring them on that journey. I think team building is becoming even more important than ever before. And when I say team building, it's not the once every 6 months or once a year, bring them together, do something, and you build a team. I'm talking more about the weekly little things that you do, where you help the whole team learn about each other, learn about each other's struggles, not just as from the perspective of the workload, but as people. And the other big thing that I really wanted to mention here, and again, it builds on what Jenna was saying, feedback. I mean, seriously, we don't know how to give proper feedback. It's shocking how people do not know how to start a sentence without but, or without being negative and slamming down the other person. People don't know how to own some parts of that mistake and build on that together rather than just dragging down the other person. And what we don't realize is that every time you drag down a person, what you are achieving is that their productivity goes backwards by 20, 30, even 50%, because they first have to now process and sometimes information, and sometimes there's no real direction as to, okay, I did that wrong, but what do I do next? So teaching your team how to give respectful feedback is a very key element in enhancing productivity and team culture. So there's a lot of things that we can talk about this, but I definitely believe that breaking down that barrier of us versus them is the first thing that you need to do when you have an offshore team, and when you want to have a team, not an offshore team and an onshore team, but a team. And I think that's what's important. I mean, sometimes, honest to God, and I think, Paul, you can relate to this quite clearly. Those people who sit in the Philippines or anywhere else in the world might have 2 to 3 more degrees than we have here. They might be 1,000 times more qualified than what we think, but this is their only option to actually be employed and be challenged and have a chance to grow and contribute the right way for a pay slip. So it's so important to know how to tap into talent and to look at them not as just an admin person, but actually as true talent that brings value to your team. Does that make sense?
Sorry. Jenna, have you got anything you want to add to that?
100%. I think, I know our offshore employee Flick, she's critical in this business. So I don't see her as just admin pushing, processing things through. She is truly critical. And I think it's really important. Obviously, you do sometimes just have processes, but at the end of the day, a processor is critical, because there's obviously work that needs to be done. Without them processing or conducting that admin, there's going to be a bottleneck. So everyone is important. And I think that builds on culture. It doesn't matter what position you are in an organization, a CEO, CFO, the marketing manager, the office manager, the accountant, whatever it may be. Doesn't matter about titles. Everyone at the end of the day is a human being, and they should be treated in the same manner, not because of their title or their pay packet. And again, I know that probably goes against the grain, but I'm a true believer in that. Everyone is important and everyone should be treated equally. And if people feel like that, if all your staff feel that they are valued and treated equally, it's going to come back to you in the culture and the output, and they will go an extra mile to succeed. I know that our team will do anything for our clients within reason. That is because they genuinely care, because they feel valued.
And I think that's really important to what both you ladies just mentioned there was, it comes back down again to communication and explaining to the rest of the team the roles. So you're right, they're not titles, they're roles. And if you can explain how a business goes from the start to finish in that process, and what are the roles in between and how important they are, because if people don't perform their role here, well, we're not going to get to the end here. And that means teamwork.
Agree.
You need at the end of the day.
And it's really important to understand the roles that are seen as lesser or lower salaries. they're what succeed. And my husband is living proof. He's climbing higher and higher in the ladder. He's like, the higher I get, the less work I do.
Yeah, but
Because the ones down below are doing it. Yes, he's there to put out the fires and the risk and the strategic, but without, say, in a manufacturing sense, the operators, they're not going to be able to close big deals and do things. So everyone is there for a reason.
And I suppose there's one more thing to add. Often when you have an offshore team, you forget that they will still work together, and you need to literally look at how they fit in the team and how they fit with each other, just like you would do with someone that you see every single day in the office. If you see conflict, you won't put two people next to each other if they are opposite type of people. Let's say a people person and a systems and processes kind of person. You know exactly that they will sabotage each other's work. So you need to think in a similar way with your offshore people too. So you need to facilitate the right kind of productive environment for them so that they can bring the best version of themselves to the table.
Very, very true. So, Jenna, staying on culture for a second, what are some of the challenges in maintaining a really good culture? And probably to go with that question, who sets the tone?
Yeah. Look, I think it's set at the top, but you need everyone to live and breathe it. And like in our world, you can say when we're advising from HR, one bag egg can deliver so much toxicity in a workplace. It's incredible. And it also takes up so much time of the leaders and managers that are dealing with it. So I think it sets the tone from the top, but channels it down. And I think you have to work hard at it, especially when you're remote, whether you're remote Australia versus overseas or remote within Australia. It's not easy. It's a constant focus, but you've got to give it a red hot go from day one and daily, because unlike if you were in person, so your offshore staff, they're not going to be in person with you. You can tell by someone's demeanor, the way they're walking, their smiles, the way they're communicating around the office. You can't tell that as much when you're just talking to them briefly for a Teams meeting, video or chat. They can put on the smile, they can look good, but you can't see if they're sitting in their desk and slugging or what's going on, whether that's personal life or home. So it's making sure that you know your staff, how you can pull those things out when you're not in a physical place. And that's the biggest battle with offshore.
Very good point. Very good point. Now we've just hit 12:49. So I'm just gonna, if anyone's got any questions, I know, sorry, somebody just sent me a message saying that the chat bar is disabled, which I apologize for. I thought it was enabled, not disabled. So I apologize for that. If you've got any questions, what I'm going to do is throw them into the Q&A. I am going to go to some questions right now for both Ildi and Jenna, some of the questions that I was provided with from you guys that registered when you registered. So first one is, my question is around incentives and whether other businesses offer these to, this was to Profit Master staff. So what sort of incentives do you believe could be provided? Is it an annual bonus, the dinner, a birthday? I know, Jenna, you just touched on a couple there, but who would like to kick off with that one?
I'm a big believer of the small stuff. They work so much better than the big bonuses. And the reality is that most people are not necessarily about more money. They want to feel more valued. And you can actually do that by doing little things. A bar of chocolate or coffee for a day has exactly the same effect, if not better, than giving a financial bonus. Because the reality is that I believe that not everyone's driver is just money. I'm not sure what Jenna thinks, but
I agree. I agree. Money isn't everything. Bonuses, KPIs linked to financial rewards. We have often toyed that idea for our business internally, But as HR professionals, in a general sense, we aren't driven by that KPI linked to a financial bonus. So I think it doesn't matter on or offshore. I think it's working out what works for the people in your business. So like I just said, our business isn't driven by financial KPIs that would create more stress and angst. People feel the love and are going to give more if you treat them like normal human beings. Don't roll your eyes. Don't get frustrated if they have to take time off because the kids are sick or they've got this appointment, all that type of providing that flexibility and autonomy to make those decisions. And then things like we've got, an employee recognition policy that goes beyond just years of service. So giving those gifts, but then we also, if we get really good feedback from clients or we see someone do a really good thing, we are giving something. Just even a random $50 voucher. Well done for dealing with that really difficult situation. Well done for getting that feedback. Things that aren't planned, things that aren't in the policy.
Yes.
So there's the policy, and that's great. But also think outside. Think about what's going on and how something extra can go a really long way.
Yeah.
One more thought there, and again, I find that if you have a clear KPI that is measurable, having visuals to support the team as to where you are at helps a lot with their productivity. At the end of the day, we're human beings, and human beings are visual creatures. So the more you can support the eyes on the goal, the easier it becomes and the more rewarding it is to see that, growing and getting closer to the KPI. So the visuals are quite important.
Good feedback. Here's another one. So in our business, we're working to strengthen inclusivity across our department, which spans multiple locations and includes some team members who aren't directly reachable by phone. We've noticed some unique challenges, particularly when certain customers hesitate to engage with team members they perceive to be not local or question the legitimacy of their call. How could we better build internal culture that values all team members equally and their contributions equally, while supporting these team members to overcome customer bias and build trust in their interactions? There's a big one.
That's a big one. I personally think you need to look at it from that internal perspective before you can kind of deal with the customers. Why is there an issue that everyone's not feeling included within the one? Why is there feeling there's a divide? I think you've got to get to the root cause to then work out what you can do to close the gap. And that would be going and speaking to the individuals, the stakeholders involved, because again, it comes back to there's no point me as an external advisor saying, oh, okay, I think you got to implement X, Y, Z, if that's actually not going to benefit this business. I think what you need to do is go to the people and ask for their feedback and input as to how they feel around the inclusivity in the workplace and why there might be a divide. Now, depending on how big the business is, depending on the type of culture that you got going, but a way to do that is through a survey. You could make it anonymous. You could do a series of questions that basically pulls the information out from people, and it has to make it compulsory to get the input before moving forward to close the gaps and improve the overall picture. Because as an external person, as the senior leadership in that business, I don't think it's right to go, okay, we need to implement A, B, C. I think you need to ask and get from a different variety of groups what's going on from their perspective to then plan a way forward.
Good feedback. And look, there was probably a little bit there to unpack, so thank you for that. There was another one about the best way to unite culture and productivity together between onshore and remote staff. We've probably answered that one throughout the session. Here's another one here. What are some of the practical ways that you've seen that can really help build a strong culture to make the remote employees feel truly included, not just connected online?
Yeah. I personally, it goes back to treat them like they are an employee. Okay, there's the legal T's and C's from that employment and engagement, but every other factor, treat them like they're an onshore.
Yep.
So in our world, in our business, there is nothing different that Flick does or doesn't get compared to anyone in Australia. Nothing.
But also, don't be afraid to add those 20-minute, 30-minute weekly huddles where you only do tea and coffee on a screen and free chatter. Um, because at the end of the day, that's what that is one of the things that you will never ever be able to do otherwise. It happens naturally with the team in the office. You know, you go for a coffee to the kitchenette and you meet someone and you talk with them, but facilitate that kind of conversation with the whole team together, not just the offshore team, the whole team together. Put them on a screen, throw at them some icebreakers, break them into random little rooms and get them to find out something special about each other. And that's how you start closing that gap and bridging the connectivity between the people within the team.
And also on that, have those meetings that aren't formal and those chats. Something that we do, and it hasn't always been set from myself, is basically on like Teams, we have different channels, like funny random stuff that you put a meme in, or you send a clip that you've seen on Facebook or TikTok or something, that things that you wouldn't like probably show your coworker, hey, look at this, or you'll send to your friend. So we have that. We also have, a random thoughts and opinion where we just ask random stuff. It doesn't have to be about work. So that gets people entwined on that human level.
No, it's a very, very good point. I'm just going to just quickly at 12:57. I'm just conscious of time. So if
There's only one thing that there's a very interesting question in the I have the questions on the side, and Delia made a really good point that especially here in Australia we have that mindset of no news is good news. Now, what we need to remember is that the offshore teams, especially the offshore teams, need that positive feedback. So this whole no news is good news, it does not make sense to them. And that's one thing that we didn't touch today because that's probably another hour to unpack the cultural differences. So you need to remember that whatever we think that it's normal, they don't think necessarily that it's normal. So you have to dig a little bit deeper and understand what are their needs. What does praise mean to them? How can you actually tell them that they are doing a good job? And often it's not necessarily the open shout. Sometimes it is the little personal touches. Sometimes it is the having that extra 10, 15, 20 minutes gifted to that person just to sit with them and tell them how good they were. And they don't necessarily need it broadcasted because that might mean in their culture that they are peacocks and they are going to be pushed to the side. So it's really thinking about not just as culture as a team culture, but culture as a who I am really, where do I come from, what's the baggage that I bring along into this job.
Well said. Well said. Now, I'm just going to give everybody that's still online, thank you. It's been outstanding. So, and thank you for your questions. I'm just going to give you a quick poll. So if you can quickly answer that for me as we look to wrap up as well, I think that's going to be important. Ladies, thank you. Both Jenna and Ildi, thank you very much for, again, your openness, your honesty, the ability to share thoughts, ideas. Just a quick one. How do people find you both if they want to search for you?
On LinkedIn under my name, Jenna Paulin, or a company page Now Actually, or website nowactually.com.au.
Brilliant. And Ildi?
Well, obviously my name, that way somewhere. And find me on LinkedIn. My phone number is on the screen. And of course, thetimefix.com.au. Please feel free to reach out, and we're always open to a good conversation and help and support.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the great things. I think both ladies are always there just to support. And I know, thank you. You've been fantastic. Thank you for giving up your time and sharing thoughts, ideas again, and advice. I think it's one of the critical things that all of us as business owners, managers, it's just something we've got to constantly work with. And I know with the amount of remote teams we do have now, and Jen is a living proof of that, whether they're in Australia or outside Australia, we just need to get better at how we can actually deal with all of that. So thank you very much to both of you for joining us. To all you guys that are online, thank you. It's been a fantastic hour. Another one of our Lunch and Learns down. My next masterclass, just a quick shout out for my next masterclass. It is on the 17th of September. We're talking about networking on steroids, and I've got a very special guest, Paul Finn. Paul joined us at Hamilton Island to run a special networking session over there. Jenna was over there for that. And Paul will be joining me online for my next masterclass, just sharing again ideas from probably areas where maybe you're not good at to some of the advanced areas. So from basics to advanced, and hopefully you can join us. If you haven't seen the invite for that, look out for it as it will hit your inbox pretty soon. To all of you, thank you, Jenna, Ildi, thank you again. Thanks for joining us, and please enjoy the rest of your day. Signing off, I'll see you next time.